Africa's East Coast. Symbols of freedom are everywhere. They are absolute icons of universal rights and civil liberties for all that live here. But that wasn't always the case. In the early part of its history, the U.S. held a dark, ominous chapter of enslavement, bondage, and human trading. People of African descent were traded as laborers to work in fields. Gentlemen, memorialized behind me, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln, put a substantial end to all of that. People of color, however, still suffered through personal inequalities. Regionally, it was law of the land, until the mid to late 20th century when public outcry began denigrating these laws.
The unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Injustice was also waged on those indigenous peoples of the land through wholesale displacement. So here we are, in modern times, and the problem seems to be resolved. But not just yet.
They are bought, they are sold, as items of underground markets, dehumanized for an evening, for laboring behind closed doors. Battered, beaten, and exploited, they become nothing more than living commodities for the billion-dollar trade in enslavement. They are victims of human trafficking. Hardly a contemporary ideal, the concept of trading and enslaving human beings conjures up images of the past. An ancient practice that reached its pinnacle during the Victorian era, it was thought to be abolished by the end of the Second World War. However, prostitution and the demand for domestic labor ensured enslavement's vestigial presence in today's society. In spite of a near-universal ban, the practice continued out of sight and underground. Over time, the trade grew into the multi-billion-dollar global market we know today as human trafficking. Most anyone can be a resource, lives held in bondage, and cognizant of universal human rights. But public outcry has begun to bring the plight of these victims to light. But who are these victims? Where do they come from? How do they become victims of human trafficking?
The answers can be vague, or they can be quite clear. Violence at home, a troubled background, or economic uncertainty. Each of these can drive young people into the sex or labor trafficking trade. Here, they are easy targets for traffickers who promise economic stability and personal affection.
In other instances, a person can become bound to human trafficking while suffering none of these afflictions at all. But how and where do human traffickers establish their trade? And what happens to someone who unmistakably becomes part of their customs? The answers to both prove not to be enigmatic, but analytical. Human trafficking could happen here.
Or here. Or here. Practically any place is susceptible to labor or sex trafficking depending on its cultural profile.